Okay, and we're on the air.
Brilliant. Hey, Rick, how's it going?
Pretty good. Hi, Dave. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
I think we're late again. Did we miss a week out?
I think so. I think according to the little hand is on
Yeah,
the late.
yeah, I slept through that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I my bus was late and there were locusts. So sorry, but here we are.
Yeah, sorry, here we are.
So Rick, how has your language learning been going lately?
Oh, not good. Not good at all. Well, as you know, I've been doing a lot of French, pretty much consistently nonstop French for almost a year now. But so all the other stuff got put back. Like Italian sort of got parked, and Mandarin definitely got parked. I haven't looked at it at all. Um, and so I'm getting a bit burned out on French, and recently I was thinking I should try and take a break, basically, and look at something else. So I started looking back at Mandarin again. I was looking at tutors, um, looking at sort of bringing up the Pemsler again as I train into work, just to listen. Reading, obviously, I can't because I don't know all the characters, but I could do some character memorization and try and get some tutors in. So I was seriously considering, going back to the Mandarin, even just to sort of get a break from French in my head for a little while. It's just one of those things that when you sort of get to an intermediate stage or a sort of more advanced stage, you just get a bit burned out on the study. And so it's nice to sort of mix it up a bit, do something different, something more fun. Because if you're not having fun, then it becomes a chore, and you don't really want to do it. You know what I mean?
I hear you. I hear you. That would make a great talk for a gathering of polyglots. Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah. No. Probably find somebody else to find another Vic.
Well, what is your what is your motivation for learning it in the first place? Is it just to learn French, or do you have an ultimate goal, like say to go to France, or do you have any set deadline that you're working towards?
Well, initially, my initial thing was I started to work for a French company here in London, and so there was a lot of French speakers around me, and I just thought I would be courteous to learn the language and also to sort of see what they were saying. Um, Vicious, they were talking about me. Um,
And with good reason.
yeah, probably. Yeah, they weren't because they
Oh.
ignored me mostly. but yeah, so I started down that path, and then I've been going ever since. But I didn't really have any interest in, like being in France and getting the culture and spending years and summers in Paris and all that sort of stuff. And I wasn't really interested in any of that. It was more just to speak to French people that I was meeting here in London. So that is sort of carried on. But again, I have the problem where I sort of keep going in the language rather than stopping. Um, unlike myself. So yeah, so more fool me, I just carried on. But recently, potentially, I might be doing a talk in Bratislava in French, which means that I really need to brush up my French really, really well. And so hence I've been concentrating on it quite a bit in the last sort of 5 or 6 months. So, and also I'd ideally like to take a test and get DELF certification. So they do, I don't know if you're familiar with the Common European Language Frameworks. You get A1 and A2, which is beginner, B1, B2, which is intermediate, and then C1 and C2, which are advanced level. And then you have natives, which you can never get unless you're sort of born there. So that's luck of the draw. So I can't get that one. But I did think that it would be nice to progress to sort of the C1 level. But you can take these tests, which are, given around the world, but you have to schedule them and pay for them. And then they basically test your French. And they, you figure out what level you're at. So the plan was eventually to try and take a C1 French test. which hopefully it passed because it does cost money to take the test.
So have you taken any of these tests yet?
No, I've taken some mock exams and some online mock exams, but I haven't actually done a real test at. So like here in London, you can go to the French embassy, you can take the test there. There's a couple of universities where you can take the test. They do this, worldwide. So there are, if anybody's interested, you can find places to take the DELF, DELF. Can't remember for the life of me what it stands for, but, but that's the name of the test. They do one in Italian as well, but I hadn't really ever intended to take that test.
So do you go in and take a test and then they tell you what level you're at, or do you have to apply for the specific A1 or B2?
Yeah,
test?
see, this is where they get you. It depends on the language. I've talked to people who've done Spanish, and one of the Spanish exams, you basically they give you the test, and the test just gets progressively harder, and then when you can't do anymore, that's the level you've reached. But the French exam is slightly different. You apply for the level you think you are, and you take the test. So I could take an A1 test, and I'm sure I'd pass it because it's very, very beginner basic stuff, and that would give you that level. But you have to try and gauge what it is. Otherwise, you're just going to be throwing money away. Because for example, if you've only been learning French for a couple of months and you went and tried to take the C2 exam, you really would not have a hope, and you just not get the C2. They wouldn't say to you, "Oh, you're actually an A1." They would just say, "Nope, sorry." So yeah, so it actually depends on the language, but French is one of those ones that you have to sort of know where you're at before you apply for the test.
Okay, so you would theoretically have to take up to 6 exams to find out exactly where you're at.
Yeah.
I don't think you have that kind of time.
No, or money, yeah. So.
Okay. Where do you think you're at right now? What level, if you had to guess?
I usually estimate that I'm probably somewhere around B1 or B2. So high intermediate, maybe. I've spoken to, on italki, a few French instructors and tutors and some are professional teachers, and they reckoned I was sort of B1, B2. So if I were to take an exam, I'd probably go for a B2 because I think I would probably pass that test.
Okay, excellent. When might you go about doing this? Do you have any plan for being tested?
No.
Will you do it before your presentation?
I might do, but because it is easier for me now because I'm working in London, so it would be easier because most of the tests are in London, so I could schedule an exam and do it. But it takes it's an all-day thing. They test you on reading, writing, oral comprehension, and then speaking. So you basically have to come up. They give you a subject, and you have to speak on that subject, and then they ask you questions about the topic and all that sort of stuff. So it's quite an intensive examination. I've read a lot about it, but I haven't actually done it myself.
Well, sounds thorough and exhausting.
Yeah, bit of a nightmare, I think.
Well, so now you now have a goal. You have something to look forward to and work towards. How are you going to proceed, and how much of a break might you take by going to Mandarin or any other language?
Well, see, this is the sort of thing you get. So I've one of the talks I'm going to be doing is to sort of differentiate between demotivation and demoralization. So if you're demoralized, in other words, when you're demoralized, it's like what's a good example? If we use language as an example, we'd say that you wouldn't want to. You just feel that you're never ever going to learn this language, no matter what you do and how much time you put in. It's just you're never going to learn it. And that's your attitude. Well, if that's your attitude, then you're demoralized. So no amount of motivation will help you. So if somebody said to you, "Oh, I'll give you, $2,000 to learn this language," although that's motivation, and in theory you should be jumping at the chance, you probably, if you're demoralized, you're not going to take it because you think, well, I can't do it because I just can't do it, So you wouldn't rise to the challenge. So, and then in fact, you would just feel worse because the motivation just makes you feel worse. So it's part of the thing that people get, demoralization is a lot more severe of a problem than demotivation, because you can usually remotivate yourself, but it's very hard to stop demoralization. And that's part of, they do CBT training and all sorts of psychological stuff to help people that feel demoralized.
Wow. Well, lousy French learners like you, are really bad at learning French. So, but don't be demoralized.
Yeah, no, yeah. Je suis American. So, but for me, it's not that much of a problem. My problem is it's just, I'm just getting a bit burned out on it. And I think, changing things up a bit would let my brain take a little bit of a rest and try something else. There is something, I can't remember the name of it, called the bow wave effect, like the bow wave, like a bow wave on a ship. And I can't remember the actual details, but basically when you're learning, sometimes if you take a break and when you come back to it, it's all sort of settled in your head and you're actually better at it than when you were studying it full time. And I can't remember the actual psychology behind it, but it is basically something about, once you've taken a break, your mind gets a bit of time to embed things and settle it in. You can't stop. That doesn't mean years and years.
Yeah.
A few weeks or a little bit of time to rest in between.
Yeah. No, definitely. You have to sometimes let things kind of sit and marinate and internalize in your brain. I deal with that a lot with everything. So it's nice to be able to take breaks for weeks at a time and then come back to it and kind of start where you left off, but with a more solid foundation, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean that's the plan. I think I'll just but plus the other thing is, of course, that I've left my Italian far too long. I just today I went down and I was speaking to this Italian lady, and I was finding it really hard to sort of dredge up the Italian back into my head, and it was getting, like French words kept popping up, and I was having to shove them out of the way. No, not you, not you. So I mean, as I was talking to her, as it starts to come back, the more you do it, and I got. Within about 5 or 10 minutes, I became more fluent. I could speak to her without much problem after that, because it had sort of shunted the French out the way by then. So it's just I think I need to just spend a bit more time, a bit more care and attention, and a bit of give the Italian language a bit of love for a while. And then Mandarin, of course, I've never really got to a high enough level that it just basically all went, if you see what I mean. Because the problem is, if you don't get to sort of an intermediate level, if you're just at the beginner stage, you just forget everything, and then you start again at the bottom and try and work your way back through it.
Yeah, I definitely experienced that, where there are a number of languages that I studied a little bit of and haven't touched them in well over a year, and now they're gone. Even Slovak, I had a pretty good basic foundation of that, but I haven't used Slovak once since I got back from the last gathering, so it's all gone. And I've opened the book and I've listened to the first lesson, and it slowly comes back. But unfortunately, I never got to the point where I learned enough for it to marinate and stay inside me and kind of lie dormant. So I've got to get to that. What goals do you have for Italian and Mandarin other than just interest and whatnot? Do you have anything to motivate you, or is it just strictly the love of getting back to those?
Well, bizarrely, Italian, for some reason, all of a sudden, loads of people want to speak Italian to me, and I don't know why. So I've got a few apps like Hello Talk. I don't know if you're familiar with Hello Talk.
Yes, I've heard of them, never used them.
Right. Well, Hello Talk I have a few problems with that app because basically most of the conversations never really get beyond, hello, how are you, my name, blah blah blah. But occasionally they do, and recently everybody who's contacted me has been Italian, and I mean there's just a flood of Italians contacting me and trying to speak to me and things. So I really should get back to it, and I have a couple of friends who have called me and they're Italian. And there's some Italians at work, so it's just mostly getting my head back into the Italian and speaking more Italian and that sort of thing. But Mandarin, I would really like to learn to speak it, but I'm not so keen on learning all the characters. So that's why I was thinking italki possibly, where I just speak to people and get them to speak back to me, and I just learn to talk. So if I went to China, I would be really screwed. I couldn't read a stop sign, but then I could always just ask somebody what that says. So that's right.
Do you have any plans to go to China anytime soon?
No, I don't. But I did spend a lot of time in Singapore, and obviously in Singapore there's a lot of Chinese speakers. They all speak Mandarin, and I would quite like to go to Taiwan as well, actually. So I do have some plans at some point in the future to sort of do a bit more traveling. So I would like to I definitely want to go to Hong Kong. I'd like to go to Beijing. I want to return to Singapore, and I want to go back to Okinawa, actually. So wow. I might have to learn some Japanese.
Yeah, and again, character set for the script. So you would probably just want to speak or want to learn spoken Japanese or spoken Chinese.
Exactly.
Okay. Would you ever jump the line into learning the characters and the written version?
Well, I've tried that with Mandarin, and it's not too bad. I mean, there's some tips which I was thinking I should do a video on my own channel, and I should probably do this one. I learned this trick from a lady who was she's actually from Hong Kong, and she had to learn Mandarin, oddly enough. But when they were when she was learning another script, I think she was learning either Arabic or Hebrew script, I don't remember. But what she would do is you put it in Excel, and you have each cell, and you put the letters or the characters in, and then you set it at 50% grayscale, and then you print it. So then you trace over, like little kids do.
Oh yeah, like little practice books, yeah.
Yeah. So you trace over the characters until you sort of learn it, and then you get a couple blocks at the end where you freehand it. So that was helping quite a bit. So I might return to that. But in order even to read a newspaper, you need like 3,000-4,000 characters. So that's a lot of memory. That's a lot of memorization.
Definitely. Well, I was in Hong Kong last summer, and I tried learning a little bit of Cantonese, and I found that the spoken is one thing, of course the written is another, and both I could pick up just a little bit, but the methods were so different because when you're looking at the characters, it's easy to recognize certain ones, but again, you've got the visual, and it doesn't sync up with the words that you actually learn, like thank you and hello and all that. And I found that I was going at cross purposes, so I decided to quit learning the Chinese characters and just go for spoken, because all I would do is walk around and talk to people and say hello, I'd like a donut, how much for this Star Wars book, and but the written was still kind of fun because I could recognize things, and there are certain signs and certain characters that I saw all the time, like on shop signs and street signs, and it was a good way to start. And if I'd been there longer, I probably would have gotten more under my belt. But I just found trying to learn both separately was almost impossible for me, at least.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I've had people for Mandarin, they tell me that you probably are better off learning Pinyin first. Mm-hmm. Because if you can pronounce it and Pinyin, then you then like in a computer keyboard, you can type in the Pinyin and pick the character from a list, like of 5. So you know, that sort of makes life easier. And when I was using the Hello Talk with the Chinese people, I would do that because I have the Chinese pinyin keyboard on my phone, so it would allow me to sort of pick the character, and obviously start to recognize them after a while. And then sometimes you just, I have no idea. I'll just pick one at random and see if that's the right one. It never was. That never worked. That doesn't work, by the way. If anybody's thinking of trying that, that don't work.
Well, if you pick them at random, throw them in Google Translate or some equivalent translation program before you proceed with using them. So
yeah. So what do you do? I mean, before we started, you were saying you were a bit that you hadn't done a lot of language stuff for a while. I know you're studying to be a linguist, but you haven't done any languages for a while.
Yeah, well, I haven't been studying them for fun the way that I used to, where I'll just get a book, learn vocabulary, memorize the words, watch the DVDs with the subtitles or audio. And I used to kind of bounce around from language to language, and with some of them, I would have this level where if I went away and then came back a month later, I would still have a decent foundation. But a lot of that has not stuck because I've been studying how to study languages. As I've mentioned ad nauseum, I'm in grad school, hoping to get a master's in linguistics by the end of the year. And I love it. It's fascinating. I'm pursuing language revitalization and learning, about field methods and learning about typology, how languages are related by common characteristics. And I'm taking all these other classes, and I'm learning how to look at a language and how to recognize certain parts about it. So we'll look at examples of any number of languages and look at characteristics, and I'll recognize how the language works, but I won't necessarily memorize the vocabulary or know how to put things together and make real sentences. And I found it really interesting that I'll recognize words, but I'll recognize them not for what they mean, but how they're, like what their components are. And so I thought, well, that it seems almost counterproductive to learning languages, and it really is in some ways. So I've been applying for fellowships. I've been doing papers and reading tons of readings for the classes. And I just haven't had a lot of time to sit down and kind of do a language for fun. And it's a little depressing, but at the same time, you and I, we're talking about coming up with ideas to help, beginner language learners. And it's nice to try and find ways to solve this problem, so then I can share that, with firsthand experience. Because a lot of people are like, how do I find time to study a language? It's like, well, you can spout out some common ideas, but now that I'm in a situation where I'm so pressed for time and I really want to start studying languages for fun and for practical use, now I've got to sit down and figure out how I want to do that. So it's been a tricky semester. Last semester was not quite so busy. This semester just seems overwhelmingly so in a good way. But yeah, all my dreams, like we had talked a couple episodes ago about what languages we want to study for 2018, and I've been at the minimum line for most of those, if not all.
So remind me again, which ones you're going to do? Are you going to go back to doing Slovak?
Yes, I want to continue that. I'm still not fully committed to the polyglot gathering, but I want to proceed as though I'm definitely going, and I'd like to learn some Slovak. I got the colloquial Slovak package. Actually, I guess just the book, because the audio is online for free, and it's got, I think, like maybe 24 chapters. So I'm hoping to start this weekend and start doing a chapter every week, and hopefully I'll be able to finish it by the time the gathering happens.
So do you know the difference between being committed to something and being involved in something?
No one told me there was going to be a quiz.
I'll tell you.
No, Rick, tell me, what's the difference between being committed and being involved?
Right. Have you ever eaten breakfast?
Once or twice a day.
Right. In breakfast, a chicken is involved, but a pig is committed.
And just like that, he studied languages.
But yeah, so you're involved in a polyglot conference, not actually committed to it.
Yeah, exactly. So So yeah, so and a lot depends on whether or not I can actually go. Again, I plan to be in Hong Kong for maybe a week in May, and
You.
that will kind of determine, and the things that happen later in the summer will determine whether or not I can get the time and funding to go to the polyglot gathering. So I can't fully commit to something until I know for sure that I'm going, but I want to, at least be involved a little bit. I want to refresh the language. And once I can get to a point where I can hunker down and study it and know that I have that goal ahead of me, then I think that will help me speed up the process.
Well, see, that was why I was thinking about learning Czech, but it's mostly because like people in Slovakia they'll know what you're saying if you say it in Czech. They may not know it if I say it in Czech, but if people who can actually pronounce Czech can say it, they get it. But I do know a lot of people in the Czech Republic, and so I did think it'd be nice to sort of maybe learn it to sort of your level of commitment, where I'm not actually going to devote the rest of my life to this, but 6 or 8 months just to learn the basics of hello and thank you and all that good stuff would be show a bit of courtesy.
That's not a bad idea. Why not do the other way around and learn Slovak, and then you can speak to your Czech friends and they should understand you for the most part. What's the advantage of one over the other?
Because I know people that speak Czech and I could get them to teach me.
Oh, okay. Well, fair enough. Okay.
Maybe even for free.
Oh, yeah. Hey, there you go. All right. Road trip to Prague. Woo! Let's go.
Yeah, there's a good point as well. Woohoo!
I haven't danced much today, so I'm going to dance now. Oh yeah, getting funky. Okay, I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, where's your cat?
I don't know actually. It's well, there are two of them. One of them is very skittish and is afraid of people, even on the computer screen. And then the other one has been a hellion earlier today, and now she's gone. So maybe she's tuckered out. Or maybe she's making me look bad and learning Slovak behind my back.
Possibly.
Yeah. So what are your goals then for the next few weeks at least?
Well, I think the next few weeks I'll probably switch over to doing a bit more Italian. I've got, but again, that's mostly just going to be trying to talk to people. So I'll talk to people on the phone or just reactivate the Italian that way, as opposed to studying. I have a couple books I haven't read yet, so I'll probably, dive into some of those. But I think the main thing I'll probably change is probably the Mandarin. I'm more likely to. I have a Pimsleur course. I might re-listen to the Pimsleur course to try and get some of that back into my head, and then maybe schedule a couple lessons. It's actually pretty convenient because I'm in England, and to schedule a course with somebody in like Taiwan or China, because of the time difference, it's normally their morning at night for me. So I can typically schedule something, I don't know, like 10 o'clock at night, my time. And it's, morning their time. So they're up and about and ready to teach. So it's an advantage, as opposed to, the US where I'm late, so I'd have to get up really early, and I'm not a early riser by any stretch of the imagination.
No, I hear you. Yeah. The nice thing was when I was in Hong Kong, it was exactly 12 hours from East Coast USA. So if I wanted to call someone here, it was easy math, and we could usually do it at like 8 or 9, where both sides were, up and going. But that was a really small window for us. So, so you got a little better off. So.
Yeah, slightly better. So anyway, so I'm probably going to do that. But what are you going to do for fun? I can probably help you out with some of the time management tips. But what language are you going to just, sneak in there 15 minutes a day?
It's hard to choose because there are so many good ones. I want to work on some endangered languages like Manx or Lakota. I have a strong desire to go back to Navajo for some reason, and then there's Tunica, a language that I'm helping kind of work on textbook ideas and other things. So so there are these languages that are really tied to what I want to be doing, and they're also fun. I think earlier we spoke about how someone got me a set of Maltese audio and books, and I'd love to start delving into that and putting that on my smartphone and playing them wherever I go. Same with the Lakota. I've got a bunch of CDs that I uploaded, and I've been listening to them whenever I can. But then there are languages that are just kind of fun. Like I do miss Italian. It's fun speaking that, but I don't have the motivation to learn it to the point of speaking to anyone specifically. So I don't know. Maltese is kind of the novelty. Basque is also a novelty and kind of underrepresented. So I don't know. How do I choose?
Seriously, Dave, just pick one. You're like the guy who drives along the highway in 2 lanes. Just pick one.
5 lanes. Okay. Tell you what. I'll pick 2 languages right now: Tunica and Lakota. Those are both Native American languages. There's very little on Tunica, so you can't really test me on anything. But you can always say, "Hey, how far have you gotten with the Lakota?" And I'll see how far I can get in the week. How does that sound?
Okay, that seems a reasonable, a slightly difficult test for me as the examiner, since I don't actually know anything. What I might do is I'll try and find somebody who give you a real exam.
Okay.
Google around for a native speaker.
Oh, okay. Well, that could be tricky. I don't know if I'll actually pass anything, but I'll be able to learn, maybe 100 words in the week. So let's try that.
All right. Okay. Sounds good.
Great. And what about you? What's your mission for the next time we meet?
Stay sober, be alive.
Boring.
Which one?
Mainly the staying sober. You should have a beer. That's what lollygagging is all about.
That's true. Yeah. I should have went and got one before we started. But now I'm stuck here. So I can't do it. Maybe next week.
Okay, that sounds good.
Another one.
Okay.
Well, I think we've sort of burned up everybody's time. So I'll wave bye to you, Dave. Bye to everybody else.
All right. I'll wave bye back. Woo.
Bye. Ciao.